You probably think you know why Coca-Cola is everywhere. The red label, the secret formula, the happy commercials. But that's not the real story. The truth is, Coca-Cola didn't just sell a drink, they sold an idea. And quietly, over more than a century, that idea spread further than anyone expected. Little by little, Coca-Cola didn't just become popular, it became permanent. This isn't just a story about soda. It's a story about how a business can shape culture, memory, even war. And by the end of this, you might find yourself wondering how many of your favorite things were actually chosen for you long before you were born. And here's the interesting thing. I'm telling you this while you're probably laying there, maybe half asleep already, maybe just hoping this video helps your mind slow down. And that's what these stories are for. Not fast, not loud, just drifting along with you. Slow, soft, maybe even a little boring on purpose. But not boring because of the ideas. Boring because that's how things sink in. That's how they stay. That's why I make these videos this way. Quiet, so you don't have to try to remember anything. Some people even comment later, saying they woke up thinking about the strangest details, like soldiers drinking Coca-Cola during World War II. Funny what sticks, right? Alright, let's drift into it now. This isn't just a story about soda. It's a setup. The story begins not with a bang, not with a flash of marketing genius, but in the lingering fog of defeat, the phantom ache of a wound that wouldn't heal, and the quiet desperation of a man trying to claw his way back from oblivion. John Stith Pemberton, a Confederate cavalry lieutenant, had tasted the bitter dregs of war, a conflict that left him physically scarred and, far more insidiously, shackled to the very thing he believed could soothe his pain: morphine. This addiction, this invisible wound, festering long after Appomattox, became the crucible, the dark impetus for a concoction brewed in the cluttered back room of a small Atlanta pharmacy. A concoction born not from a desire to refresh the world, but to medicate a single suffering soul, and perhaps others like him. It was intended as a balm, a pharmaceutical corrective, a liquid solution to the very real problem of neuralgia, dyspepsia, exhaustion, and the insidious grip of opiate dependence that haunted veterans like himself and permeated the weary postbellum. South Fun was the furthest thing from his mind. Relief, tangible, chemical relief, was the only objective. He wasn't dreaming of global domination. He was desperately trying to concoct a substitute for the poison coursing through his own veins. A patent medicine to stand alongside the myriad of bitters and tonics crowding apothecary shelves, promising miracles in every bottle, promising an escape from the persistent aches of a world struggling to rebuild itself. This was the 1880s, a time when the line between pharmacy and alchemy remained blurred, when the contents of a medicine bottle were often a closely guarded secret blend of herbs, extracts, stimulants, and depressants, concocted with more hope than rigorous science. Pemberton, trained as a pharmacist, was a serial inventor of such remedies: globe, flour, cough syrup, triplex liver pills, French wine coca. It was this last formula, a variation on the popular Vin Mariani, a French tonic combining Bordeaux wine with coca leaf extract, that served as the direct progenitor. When Atlanta enacted temperance legislation in 1886, effectively outlawing alcoholic beverages, Pemberton was forced to pivot. His wine-based tonic suddenly became illegal. Necessity, that relentless mother of invention, demanded a non-alcoholic base. He retreated again to his laboratory, a sanctuary of bubbling beakers and pungent aromas, driven by his own need and the commercial imperative to salvage his formula. The result, after much trial and the crucial, fateful addition of carbonated water instead of wine, was a viscous, caramel-colored syrup designed to be mixed with plain soda water at the point of sale. He called it, quite deliberately, Coca-Cola syrup and extract. The name wasn't whimsy. It was a stark, unambiguous declaration of its key active ingredients, a bold advertisement of its intended pharmaceutical power. Coca, that word, placed deliberately first, wasn't chosen lightly. It was a calculated signal, a flashing neon sign to a populace intimately familiar with the purported benefits of the coca leaf. This wasn't mere branding. It was pharmacological truth in advertising. Cocaine, the potent alkaloid extracted from the Erythroxylum coca plant native to South America, was not yet the societal pariah it would become. In the medical understanding of the late 19th century, it was hailed as a wonder drug, a local anesthetic, a stimulant to combat fatigue, a treatment for morphine addiction, a tragically ironic twist in Pemberton's case, and a specific remedy for depression and nervous disorders. Sigmund Freud himself had recently sung its praises. By foregrounding Coca, Pemberton was tapping directly into this contemporary medical zeitgeist, promising not just refreshment, but revitalization, a jolt to the system, a lifting of the mental fog and physical lethargy that plagued so many. It was a promise of medicinal efficacy, a potent selling point whispered right there in the name itself. The cola part, referencing the cola nut from Africa, rich in caffeine, merely amplified this stimulant promise. This was no accident of nomenclature. It was a deeply intentional choice, anchoring the product firmly in the realm of therapeutic tonics, positioning it as a sophisticated drugstore solution for the weary and the unwell. It spoke not to pleasure, but to need, to a desire for chemical correction, a liquid key to unlock a state of well-being that felt perpetually just out of reach. And then there was the formula itself. Pemberton's original recipe, scribbled in a ledger or perhaps held solely in his morphine-clouded mind, was a complex alchemy. We know the stars: coca leaf extract, thus cocaine, estimated around 9 milligrams per serving initially, caffeine-rich cola nut, sugar in staggering quantities to mask the intense bitterness of the other ingredients, citric acid for tartness, phosphoric acid for bite, and purported digestive aid, vanilla caramel for color, and a blend of essential oils, cinnamon, nutmeg, narrowly orange blossom, coriander, perhaps lavender and lemon, creating that elusive spicy citrus top note. But the precise proportions, the specific sources, the exact method of combining these elements, this became the foundational myth, the sacred text, the impenetrable secret. This secrecy, fostered intensely by subsequent owners like Asa Candler, wasn't just about protecting a recipe. It was about manufacturing mystique. The legend grew, the formula locked in a vault. The Suntrust Bank Vault myth persists, though it's largely symbolic, known only to 2 executives who could never travel together, divided into parts held by different entities. Wild speculations flourished, becoming part of the drink's cultural DNA. Whispers of trace cocaine lingering long after its official removal around 1903. Under growing public pressure, rumors of exotic ingredients like deer musk or caviar. Fantastical tales involving alchemists and ancient scrolls. The truth, likely residing in a meticulous combination of fairly ordinary flavorings achieving an extraordinary synergy, is almost mundane compared to the legends. Yet, the idea of the secret formula, the impenetrable merchandise, 7X, became a stroke of accidental branding genius, far exceeding anything Pemberton envisioned. It transformed a syrup into an enigma, a consumer product into a cult object. Its very unknowability, fueling fascination and loyalty, a constant, low-grade curiosity loop that persists to this day. What is that taste? How do they do it? The mystery itself became an essential ingredient, far more potent than any trace of coca leaf. But how did this dark, medicinal syrup, born of pain and addiction, begin its improbable journey from the apothecary's shelf to the world's palate? The vehicle was as crucial as the concoction itself, the American soda fountain, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Before the widespread adoption of home refrigeration, the soda fountain wasn't merely a place to get a drink. It was a temple of temperate indulgence, a beacon of modern luxury accessible to the burgeoning middle class. Found within pharmacies initially, but soon blossoming into standalone establishments and department store counters, these gleaming marvels of marble, polished brass, and intricate spigots represented sophistication and technological progress. The soda jerk, a skilled artisan in a crisp white coat, was a performer, mixing syrups with carbonated water drawn from imposing, pressurized cylinders, creating effervescent potions right before the customer's eyes. It was theater. It was science. It was cool, literally. In a world sweltering without air conditioning, where ice was a precious commodity kept in insulated boxes, the soda fountain offered the visceral, almost magical luxury of a consistently cold, sparkling beverage. Ordering a Coca-Cola at the fountain wasn't just a transaction, it was an experience. Watching the dark syrup cascade into the tall glass, hearing the sharp hiss of carbonation as the soda water hit it, witnessing the eruption of foam, the clink of ice cubes, a luxury in itself. The careful stirring, it transformed the medicinal syrup into something special, something desirable beyond its purported health benefits. The intense sweetness, the tingling effervescence, the caffeine and trace cocaine's gentle lift, all combined within this ritual of preparation to create a sensation that felt indulgent, uplifting, and distinctly modern. The medicinal origins began to recede, overshadowed by the sheer sensory pleasure and the sophisticated environment in which it was consumed. The soda fountain elevated Coca-Cola from a mere tonic to a treat, a small, affordable luxury that felt aspirational, wrapping Pemberton's strange medicine in the shimmering cloak of everyday opulence. And so, we return to John Pemberton himself, the wounded, addicted, perpetually struggling pharmacist. He died in 1888, just 2 years after creating his signature syrup, ravaged by stomach cancer and likely still battling his morphine dependence. Impoverished and having sold off his interests in the fledgling business for a pittance to cover his debts and medical bills, he never saw a dime of the colossal fortune his creation would generate. He died believing, perhaps, that he had merely invented another moderately successful patent medicine, one among hundreds jostling for attention in a crowded market. His hobby, his desperate attempt to cure himself and find a viable product, was, in his lifetime, a commercial failure by any grand measure. The sales were modest, confined largely to Atlanta. The transition from medicinal syrup to mass beverage, the global dominance, the cultural icon status, none of this was foreordained. None of it was part of Pemberton's plan. It was a confluence of accidents. The temperance law forcing the non-alcoholic version, the evocative name highlighting ingredients whose reputations would soon sour the secrecy that birthed enduring myth, the technological context of the soda fountain that masked its origins in sensory delight, and later, the ruthless business acumen and visionary bottling strategy of men like Asa Candler, who saw not a medicine, but a feeling in a glass. Pemberton formula shouldn't have worked. A syrup designed to wean people off morphine, loaded with cocaine and caffeine, intensely bitter and requiring dilution, created by a man on the brink of personal and financial collapse. It defied logic. Its survival, let alone its ascent, was improbable. Yet, through a series of strange alchemies, of historical accident, evolving cultural tastes, brilliant and sometimes ruthless marketing, and the simple, inexplicable power of its unique flavor profile, this pharmacist's strange, medicinal hobby, born from the ashes of war and the depths of personal struggle, seeped into the fabric of daily life. It transcended its origins, not by denying them, but by transforming them, layer by layer, sip by sparkling sip, until the world forgot the morphine and remembered only the fizz, forgot the medicine and craved only the moment of refreshment, turning a Confederate veteran's failed cure into the world's most ubiquitous taste of simple, fleeting pleasure. The strangeness of that beginning, that profound disconnect between the Creator's intent and the creation's ultimate destiny, lingers in every bubble that rises to the surface, a quiet testament to the unpredictable alchemy of commerce and culture. The story of Coca-Cola's ascent, its transformation from a regional medicinal curiosity sipped cautiously at Atlanta soda fountains into the very bloodstream of American identity, wasn't written in grand pronouncements or sudden, explosive conquests. It happened in increments, almost imperceptibly, like water slowly carving stone. It unfolded in a million tiny moments, the clink of a glass bottle pulled from an ice chest on a sweltering porch, the shared pause over a fizzy drink at a lunch, counter the weary comfort of a familiar taste grasped in a muddy trench halfway across the world. This dominance wasn't achieved through a single masterstroke, but through a series of profound, often accidental, alchemies that transformed a beverage into a cultural constant, a shared experience woven into the fabric of everyday American life. It was a victory, won not by force, but by relentless, quiet, almost osmotic presence, one effervescent sip at a time. Consider the bottle. For nearly 2 decades after its invention, Coca-Cola remained largely tethered to the soda fountain, a delightful but geographically limited experience. Its potential was immense, yet physically constrained. The true catalyst for its explosive, unstoppable spread wasn't a new flavor or a massive advertising campaign, but a simple, overlooked act of trust sealed in 1899, 2 Chattanooga lawyers, Benjamin Thomas and Joseph Whitehead, possessed not capital or manufacturing expertise, but a vision. Coca-Cola, available anywhere, anytime. They saw beyond the gleaming marble countertops to the dusty general stores, the remote farmhouses, the train platforms, the places where soda fountains couldn't reach. They approached Asa Candler, the driven, often ruthless, Atlanta druggist who had consolidated control of Coca-Cola and secured the exclusive rights to bottle and sell the drink across most of the United States for the staggering sum of $1. Candler, perhaps skeptical of bottling's potential or distracted by fountain syrup sales, famously dismissed it. It remains one of history's most profound underestimations. This seemingly minor transaction, this handing over of a territorial key for a symbolic dollar, unlocked the floodgates. Thomas and Whitehead didn't just build bottling plants. They orchestrated the creation of an entire decentralized ecosystem, a vast, intricate network of independent, locally owned bottling franchises. These franchises became the capillaries carrying the caramel-colored elixir to the farthest reaches of the continent. Suddenly, Coca-Cola wasn't just a treat for a trip downtown. It was available at the corner store, delivered by horse-drawn wagon to rural communities, stacked in iceboxes at roadside stands. The bottle democratized the experience, severed it from the ritual of the soda fountain, and made Coca-Cola a portable, personal, endlessly repeatable habit. It turned a localized phenomenon into a national reality, its distribution map spreading relentlessly like ink on blotting paper, fueled not by a central command, but by the ambitions and local knowledge of hundreds of franchisees investing in their own communities, one bottle, one crate, one delivery route at a time. The humble glass bottle, often forgotten in the glare of the brand's later spectacles, was the silent, indispensable engine of its ubiquity, the physical manifestation of its escape from the pharmacy and its entry into the rhythm of daily American existence. Then came Santa Claus, not the austere, bishop-like figure of European tradition, nor the sometimes self-in, sometimes spooky depictions common in 19th century America, but the Santa we know today, the jolly, rotund, twinkle-eyed, rosy-cheeked patriarch in a fur-trimmed, vibrant red suit. This iconography, now inseparable from Christmas itself, is largely the creation of Coca-Cola advertising. Specifically, the brushstrokes of artist Haddon Sundblom, beginning in 1931, faced with the challenge of boosting winter sales, a natural slump for a cold drink, the company didn't retreat. It audaciously embraced the season, seeking to associate Coca-Cola not just with summer refreshment, but with warmth, generosity, and family togetherness. Sundblom's Santa wasn't a distant saint or a mischievous sprite. He was humanized, approachable, robust. He paused during his arduous gift-giving rounds, not for milk and cookies, but for a refreshing, ice-cold bottle of Coca-Cola. He was often depicted interacting with children, reading letters, sneaking glances at his watch, radiating a palpable sense of weary satisfaction and genuine enjoyment as he savored the drink. The color red, already part of Coke's branding, became inextricably linked to Santa through Sundblom's masterful, repeated renderings in magazines like the Saturday Evening Post, saturating the American visual landscape for over 3 decades. This wasn't just clever seasonal marketing. It was cultural appropriation on a grand, benevolent scale. Coca-Cola didn't merely use Santa. It profoundly reshaped the collective image of Santa Claus in the popular imagination, aligning him perfectly with its own brand values of happiness, universal appeal, and wholesome indulgence. They transformed Santa into the ultimate brand, ambassador, embodying the very spirit of giving and joy they wished to project, making Coca-Cola an integral, almost sacramental, part of the modern Christmas ritual. The association became so deep, so instinctive, that generations grew up unable to conceive of Santa without implicitly picturing that red can or bottle nearby. A testament to advertising's power, not just to sell products, but to reshape myth itself. The alchemy reached its most potent, its most deeply symbolic, during the cataclysm of World War II. As American troops mobilized and deployed across the globe, Coca-Cola, under the leadership of Robert Woodruff, made an audacious, almost unimaginably expensive commitment. Every American soldier, wherever they were stationed, would get a bottle of Coca-Cola for 5 cents, the same price as back home. This wasn't charity. It was patriotism fused with profound business acumen. Woodruff declared Coca-Cola essential to morale, securing critical wartime resources and exemptions. The company embarked on a logistical feat of staggering proportions, shipping not just millions of bottles, but entire bottling plants, dismantled, crated, and reassembled behind the lines, often under fire. Over 160 of these portable factories were eventually built, from the sweltering jungles of the Pacific to the frozen mud of the European front. Engineers became soldiers of syrup, risking their lives alongside combat troops to keep the production lines flowing. The effect was incalculable. In the midst of unspeakable horror, deprivation, and paralyzing homesickness, that familiar contour bottle, the distinct sound of the cap hissing open, the effervescent taste cutting through the grit and fear, it became more than a drink. It was a tangible, visceral, 5-cent piece of home. It was normalcy in a world gone mad. It was America itself, condensed into a single, sweet, fizzy sensation shared between buddies in a foxhole. A fleeting reminder of soda fountains and porch swings and safety. Soldiers wrote letters pleading for it. Generals requested plants for their sectors. It was passed around like a sacrament. And when the G's shared it with their allies, the British, the Australians, the French, civilians, liberated from oppression, they weren't just sharing a beverage. They were sharing a symbol of the country that had come to their aid. Coca-Cola became the literal taste of home, and by extension, the taste of America, of freedom, of abundance, of the life they were fighting to return to and protect. The war didn't just expose millions to Coca-Cola, it imbued the drink with an almost sacred emotional resonance, forging an unbreakable link between the brand and American patriotism that would resonate for decades, transforming it from a commercial product into a global emblem of the nation that produced it. Central to this entire slow-burning conquest was a seemingly counterintuitive, yet psychologically brilliant, tenet: never lowered the price. During the Great Depression, when competitors slashed prices and offered desperate promotions, Coke held firm at 5 cents. This wasn't stubbornness. It was a profound, almost instinctive understanding of nascent principles of brand equity and perceived value that would later become marketing gospel. In a world collapsing financially, where the value of everything seemed negotiable, Coca-Cola remained a constant. That unwavering nickel price became a psychological anchor, a tiny, affordable luxury that felt stable and reliable amidst chaos. Lowering the price, the thinking went, and history proved, would have been catastrophic. It would have signaled that Coca-Cola was just another commodity, subject to the same desperate fluctuations as everything else. It would have diminished its perceived specialness, eroded the hard-won association with quality and consistency. Holding the line at 5 cents, even as bottlers clamored for flexibility, reinforced the idea that Coca-Cola was worth it, that its unique satisfaction transcended mere economics. It taught America, slowly and by relentless example, the power of brand integrity. It demonstrated that people would pay for consistency, for the assurance of a known quality, for the emotional resonance attached to a product, even when cheaper alternatives existed. That nickel became a small, daily vote of confidence in the brand itself, a ritualistic transaction reinforcing its unique place in the consumer's mind. It transformed Coca-Cola from a mere beverage choice into a habit, an expectation, a non-negotiable part of the day's rhythm, its value fixed not just in cents, but in the intangible currency of familiarity and trust. This unwavering price point, maintained for over 70 years, was a silent sermon in the power of brand, preached millions of times a day at countless counters and vending machines, teaching generations the subtle lesson that some things, some feelings in a bottle, are worth their fixed, consistent price. Of course, no dominance goes unchallenged, and Coca-Cola's golden era was punctuated by a rivalry that escalated into a near-existential crisis. The rise of Pepsi-Cola, and specifically, the devastatingly simple weapon it deployed in the 1970s and 80s, the Pepsi challenge. Pepsi, historically the scrappy underdog, had long positioned itself as the youthful, value-driven alternative, twice as much for a nickel too. But the challenge was different. It bypassed advertising claims and went straight to the primal sense, taste. In malls, supermarkets, and public events, Pepsi set up blind taste tests. People would sip 2 unmarked colas, M&Q, and choose which one they preferred. Time and again, sip after sip, consumer after consumer, a significant majority chose the sweeter, smoother profile of Pepsi over the more complex, slightly sharper bite of Coca-Cola. The results were filmed, turned into devastatingly effective commercials featuring relatable, surprised consumers declaring their preference for Pepsi. The impact was seismic. Coca-Cola's market share, once seemingly unassailable, began to erode. The psychological foundation of the brand, the idea that Coca-Cola wasn't just popular, but inherently superior, was under direct empirical assault. The challenge wasn't just an ad campaign. It was a public referendum on taste, and Coca-Cola was losing. It created a profound cognitive dissonance. Millions who had grown up loyal to Coke, who associated it with childhood, Americana, and personal identity, were confronted with the unsettling possibility that their preference might be based purely on habit, nostalgia, or branding, not on the actual sensory experience. The blind sip threatened to unravel decades of emotional investment, reducing the sacred formula to just another cola, and one that a majority seemingly didn't prefer in a direct comparison. The existential panic this induced within Coca-Cola headquarters cannot be overstated. It led directly to the disastrous, tone-deaf launch of New Coke in 1985, a sweeter formula explicitly designed to mimic Pepsi and win the blind taste tests, a catastrophic misreading of the brand's true value lying not merely in flavor chemistry, but in its deep, intangible resonance as a cultural artifact. The visceral, furious, public backlash against abandoning the original formula was the ultimate, ironic proof of how deeply Coca-Cola had embedded itself into American identity. People weren't just rejecting a new taste. They felt a piece of their own history, their own sense of self, was being taken away. The frantic return of Coca-Cola Classic was a humiliating retreat, but it solidified a crucial truth. Coca-Cola had transcended being a mere beverage. It was a shared memory, a cultural touchstone, an irreplaceable piece of the American fabric. The Pepsi Challenge, intended to kill the king, ultimately revealed the true, unshakable nature of its crown. Forged not in momentary taste, preferences, but in decades of accumulated moments, associations, and shared national experience. And so, we arrive at the final, almost imperceptible alchemy. Coca-Cola ceased to be just a drink and became synonymous with America itself. This wasn't a sudden proclamation, but the slow, inevitable result of all those tiny moments accumulating over decades. It was the ubiquity achieved by the bottling network, ensuring its presence in every main street store and remote farmhouse. It was the jolly, red Santa Claus, a Coke in hand, becoming the universal image of American Christmas cheer. It was the G is sharing warm bottles in the mud of Normandy, or on Pacific atolls, making Coke the literal taste of the homeland they represented. It was the unwavering nickel price, a symbol of American resilience and consistency even in the darkest times. It was surviving the Pepsi Challenge not through taste alone, but through the sheer, unbreakable weight of collective memory and emotional connection. Coca-Cola's trajectory mirrored America's own 20th century rise, optimistic, expansionist, industrious, relentlessly modern, promising refreshment and a moment of pleasure accessible to all. Its advertising didn't just sell soda. It sold an idealized vision of American life, wholesome, happy, inclusive, forward-looking. It soundtracked moments of leisure, family gatherings, sports triumphs, first dates. Its contour bottle became an instantly recognizable icon, as American as the Liberty Bell or a Ford Mustang. When people around the world thought of America, its dynamism, its popular culture, its perceived abundance and optimism, they often pictured, consciously or not, a bottle of Coca-Cola. It wasn't just from America. It became a liquid distillation of America, a cultural export carrying the weight of the nation's image in every fizzy sip. The golden era wasn't merely about market share. It was about Coca-Cola completing its slow, profound osmosis into the American psyche, becoming less a product consumed and more an elemental part of the landscape, a familiar flavor woven into the nation's story, a simple, sparkling proof of belonging. It won America not with a bang, but with a billion quiet hisses of bottle caps opening, a billion small moments of recognition, a billion sips that whispered over decades, "This is us." The story we're told about the Cola Wars is usually one of jingles, celebrity endorsements, and blind taste tests broadcast into millions of living rooms, a vibrant, noisy spectacle of marketing one-upmanship. And while those skirmishes raged in the bright lights of primetime television, another, far more decisive, war was being waged in the shadows. This was a conflict fought not with catchy slogans, but with the gritty realities of geopolitics, the cold calculus of economic leverage, the relentless laying of steel pipelines for syrup and the intricate diplomacy required to secure the right to sell sugar water in a fractured world. This was a war where distribution wasn't just logistics. It was the ultimate weapon, where political access was more valuable than any ad budget, and where the victor wouldn't necessarily be decided by taste buds, but by who could physically get their product into the hands of consumers, village by village, nation by nation, often against the backdrop of actual wars and ideological iron curtains. The true battle for global dominance wasn't waged on billboards. It was fought in the corridors of power, on the docks of foreign ports, and in the unseen, intricate web of supply chains slowly, silently encircling the globe. The opening salvo of this hidden war wasn't fired by an ad executive, but by statesmen and economists grappling with the ruins of Europe. The Marshall Plan, America's colossal undertaking to rebuild the war-shattered continent, wasn't just an act of altruism or containment. It was an unprecedented opportunity, a backdoor forged in geopolitical steel. Coca-Cola, having cemented its status as a symbol of American abundance and resilience during the war, was uniquely positioned. It wasn't merely allowed into Europe, it was often facilitated. American officials, consciously or unconsciously, saw the presence of Coca-Cola as synonymous with the success of the American model, a tangible, everyday symbol of recovery, modernity, and the consumer-driven prosperity they were promoting, securing scarce building materials for new bottling plants, expediting import licenses for the secret syrup concentrate, navigating complex local regulations. Coca-Cola executives often found doors opened more easily under the implicit, sometimes explicit, umbrella of American influence. The drink became part of the psychological reconstruction, a fizzy ambassador of the American way. In countries like Germany, France, and Italy, establishing bottling operations wasn't just business. It was intertwined with the broader project of anchoring these nations firmly within the Western sphere, making the taste of Coke an early, potent symbol of alignment with the new American-led world order. This wasn't brute force. It was a subtle symbiosis where American geopolitical goals and Coca-Cola's commercial ambitions found powerful, mutually reinforcing alignment in the fertile ground of post-war reconstruction. Meanwhile, behind the imposing Iron Curtain, a different, far more paradoxical battle unfolded. The Soviet Union, ideologically committed to resisting American cultural and economic imperialism, viewed Coca-Cola with profound suspicion. It wasn't just a beverage. It was liquid capitalism, a sugary vector of bourgeois values, threatening to corrode the foundations of the socialist state. Its very ubiquity in the West made it a potent symbol of the enemy. Coca-Cola was effectively banned, deemed politically toxic, but nature and economics abhors a vacuum. Enter Pepsi, desperate for hard currency to prop up its struggling economy. The Soviet leadership proved pragmatic. In a groundbreaking 1972 barter deal, negotiated by none other than future U.S. President Richard Nixon, then out of office but leveraging his connections, PepsiCo secured exclusive rights to sell its cola in the USSR. The payment, not dollars, but Stolichnaya vodka, which Pepsi would then distribute in the West. It was a masterstroke of economic necessity, overcoming ideological purity. For Pepsi, it was a monumental propaganda coup, the first American consumer product officially sold inside the Soviet Union, Pepsi billboards materialized in Moscow, a jarring splash of capitalist color in the gray Soviet landscape. Coke, the symbol of America the Soviets loved to hate, was locked out. Pepsi, the perennial underdog, had seemingly pulled off the ultimate geopolitical heist, planting its flag on forbidden territory through sheer opportunism and the Kremlin's thirst for convertible currency. The Soviets got vodka sales. Pepsi got bragging rights and a powerful narrative of beating Coke at its own global game, all while Coke fumed on the sidelines, its iconic status, ironically, making it politically radioactive in the world's largest closed market. The Pepsi-Soviet deal, however, yielded an even more bizarre and tangible consequence: the Pepsi Navy. As the barter arrangement scaled up, the Soviets needed to deliver ever larger quantities of vodka and later ships, including aging warships, and oil tankers to settle their account with PepsiCo. Pepsi, a soft drink company, suddenly found itself in possession of a motley fleet of Soviet naval vessels. The logistical absurdity was staggering. What does a soda company do with a decommissioned destroyer or a fleet of oil tankers? They briefly became the sixth largest navy in the world, on paper, a factoid endlessly repeated but practically surreal. Pepsi sold off most of the ships for scrap, turning warships back into soda syrup. While this episode became a quirky footnote in business history, a symbol of Pepsi's audacious deal-making, Coca-Cola watched from the sidelines with a surprising, almost imperceptible sense of satisfaction. Why? Because Pepsi's very public, very tangible exchange, warships for soda syrup, validated the immense, intangible value Coca-Cola had spent decades building. It demonstrated, in the starkest possible terms, that cola wasn't just a cheap refreshment. It was a commodity powerful enough to be traded for battleships. It proved that the brand, the distribution rights, the very idea of American cola possessed staggering geopolitical and economic worth. Pepsi's Navy was a spectacle, but it inadvertently underscored the immense value Coke had cultivated globally, a value rooted not in ships, but in pervasive presence and cultural cachet. Coke didn't need a navy. Its value was already recognized. In every corner of the free world, it dominated. The spectacle of Pepsi scrapping Soviet warships only amplified the perception that cola was serious business, a global currency Coke had already mastered. This brings us to the fundamental, often overlooked, truth of Coca-Cola's ultimate victory in the silent war. Its real product wasn't soda, it was distribution. While Pepsi chased the next big thing, new flavors, Pepsi Twist, Crystal Pepsi, celebrity endorsements, Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, and the fleeting victories of taste tests, Coca-Cola was engaged in a decades-long, capital-intensive, and often thankless project, building the most sophisticated, resilient, and far-reaching production and distribution network the consumer goods world had ever seen. This wasn't glamorous. It involved negotiating thousands of contracts with local bottlers, many still independent franchisees, investing billions in sprawling syrup concentrate plants strategically located around the globe, laying intricate pipelines within massive bottling facilities, securing fleets of trucks adapted to every conceivable terrain, establishing depots in the remotest villages, and navigating the Kafkaesque bureaucracies of hundreds of nations. It meant understanding how to get product onto a donkey cart in the Andes, a rickshaw in Mumbai, or a bicycle basket in rural China. It involved building relationships, not just with consumers, but with governments, customs officials, local warlords in unstable regions, and countless small shopkeepers. This invisible infrastructure was Coca-Cola's true moat, its unassailable fortress. Pepsi could win a taste test. Coke could physically get its product onto a shelf, any shelf, faster and more reliably than anyone else. This logistical dominance allowed Coke to achieve unparalleled economies of scale, driving down costs per unit and enabling aggressive pricing and marketing spend that further cemented its advantage. While Pepsi was distracted by the flavory of and the siren song of celebrity, Coke was pouring concrete, laying track, and forging the steel sinews of global reach. Pepsi might briefly capture attention. Coke owned the ground, the literal routes to market that determined what consumers could actually buy. The contrast in strategies became starkly evident in their approaches to emerging markets. Pepsi often entered with fanfare, leveraging big partnerships like its early entry into the USSR or splashy marketing campaigns. Coke, however, played the long, quiet game. It would often establish a toehold presence, perhaps through imports or a small local partnership, focusing intensely on understanding the market, building relationships, and, crucially, laying the groundwork for local production seam. They understood that true dominance required local roots, local bottlers investing their own capital and local knowledge, local sourcing of sugar and other inputs where possible, and crucially, local production of the syrup concentrate or the finished product to avoid crippling import duties and logistical nightmares. This required immense patience and upfront investment with delayed returns. While Pepsi might be celebrating a high-profile launch, Coke was often years ahead, quietly, building a bottling plant, training a local workforce, and establishing relationships with thousands of small retailers. By the time the market matured and consumer spending power increased, Coke's distribution network was already deeply entrenched, humming efficiently, capable of flooding the market with product at a moment's notice. Pepsi would arrive to find Coke already embedded in the local ecosystem, its red signs ubiquitous, its coolers present in even the tiniest shops, its delivery trucks a familiar sight. The battle was often over before Pepsi's first celebrity ad aired. Coke's strategy wasn't about winning the sprint of initial entry. It was about mastering the marathon of ubiquitous, effortless availability. Their weapon wasn't a sweeter formula or a cooler ad. It was the relentless, unseen machinery that ensured a bottle of Coke was always within arm's reach, anywhere on Earth, delivered not by a navy of warships, but by a vast, silent army of trucks, carts, and dedicated local bottlers. The Cola Wars, therefore, were fought on two distinct, yet interconnected, fronts. The visible front was dazzling, a carnival of commercials, slogans, and celebrity faces, a battle for hearts and minds waged in living rooms and supermarkets. But the decisive front was hidden, a grueling war of logistics, diplomacy, and long-term infrastructure investment, fought in government offices, on factory floors, and along thousands of miles of dusty roads. Coca-Cola's ultimate global dominance wasn't solely due to its secret formula or even Santa Claus. It was forged in the patient, unglamorous work of building an unparalleled global distribution system, leveraging geopolitical wins when possible, enduring ideological blockades when necessary, and understanding with profound clarity that the real product was not the brown, fizzy liquid in the bottle, but the near magical ability to place that bottle consistently, affordably, and irresistibly into the hand of a consumer anywhere on the planet. While Pepsi chased the ephemeral thrill of the next marketing victory or flavor innovation, Coke was building the pipes, the literal and figurative infrastructure that would ensure its syrup flowed uninterrupted into the bloodstream of global commerce, a silent victory achieved not with fireworks, but with the steady, relentless clink of bottles moving down a conveyor belt, destined for every corner of a thirsty world. The surface seems familiar enough. That iconic contour bottle, still gracing shelves, the satisfying hiss crack of a can opening on a hot day, the familiar, almost primal taste that floods the memory. Coca-Cola, it appears unchanged, a comforting constant in a world spinning faster by the minute. But to see only the red and white logo, to focus solely on the caramel-colored fizz, is to fundamentally misunderstand the leviathan that Coca-Cola has become. It is to mistake a single, shimmering scale for the entire creature gliding silently through the depths of global commerce. The truth is far stranger, far more pervasive. Coca-Cola, the brand born from morphine and mystery, has transcended beverage. It has become an environment, a ubiquitous condition, a fundamental layer of the modern human experience, an empire built not just on thirst, but on the quiet, relentless mastery of choice itself, flowing through pipes we rarely see. Forget soda. That is the first, crucial illusion to shatter. Coca-Cola Classic, Diet Coke, Coke Zero. These are merely the familiar flagships sailing atop an armada so vast it defies comprehension. Step into any supermarket, any corner store, from Atlanta to Accra, and the sheer breadth is staggering. Dasani water gurgling in its blue bottle, the sharp citrus bite of Sprite and Fanta, the slow burn energy of Monster, the probiotic tang of Smart Water, the nostalgic fizz of Barq's root beer, the sleek minimalism of Topo Chico mineral water, the fruity explosions of Minute Maid and Simply Juices, the sophisticated bubbles of Schweppes tonic, the acquired herbal bite of Dr. Pepper, the vitamin-infused promise of Powerade, the cold brew sophistication of Costa Coffee, the wholesome simplicity of Honest Tea, dozens, hundreds. Even when you account for regional variations and acquired brands, this isn't a beverage company. It's a hydration ecosystem, a meticulously curated portfolio designed to colonize every conceivable occasion for liquid consumption. From the morning coffee run to the post-workout electrolyte boost, from the child's lunchbox juice pouch to the premium mixer in a high-end cocktail, from the desperate need for water in a drought-stricken region to the decadent treat of a vanilla Coke float. The Coca-Cola system has a vessel, a flavor, a formulation waiting. They are the silent architects of our liquid landscape, shaping not just what we drink, but the very categories of drink we consider possible, necessary, desirable, which leads to the core, almost zen, brilliance of their modern dominance. Asterisk, asterisk, they genuinely do not care if you buy a Coke Zero or a bottle of Smart Water. Asterisk, asterisk, the agonizing choice you face at the cooler, the internal debate between sugar and stevia, between caffeine and calm, between nostalgic fizz and purified stillness. It's an illusion of autonomy, staged within their own meticulously designed coliseum. Whichever cap you twist, whichever can you pull, the overwhelming likelihood is that your money flows back into the same vast, intricate network, the Coca-Cola system. The bottler who delivers Dasani is almost certainly the same entity, or deeply partnered with the entity that delivers classic Coke. The syrup concentrate for Fanta travels the same global pipelines, both literal and logistical, as the concentrate for Sprite. The marketing dollars promoting body armor fuel the same corporate engine that funds Santa Claus ads for Coke. This is the ultimate hedge against shifting consumer winds, the war on sugar. Fine, buy Coke Zero Sugar, or Schweppes Slimline Tonic, or a gallon of Dasani. The demand for functional beverages. Here's a monster, a Powerade, a smart water with antioxidants. The premiumization of hydration. Topo Chico, with its artisanal bubbles and minimalist chic, awaits. The ethical consumer seeking organic tea, honest tea, has you covered. Each perceived shift, each new health trend or ethical concern becomes not a threat. To navigate a new channel, to dig within their existing, all-encompassing delta. Your choice is an echo in their canyon. Your preference is merely data point refining the flow. Victory for Coca-Cola is no longer defined by the dominance of a single red can. It's defined by the sheer, inescapable volume of any bottle or can bearing the mark of their system passing through a cash register anywhere on earth. It's the triumph of the portfolio, the quiet victory of owning the entire menu. Consider the red, consider the white. It seems so simple, so obvious. Yet, the maintenance of those two colors, the specific, relentless consistency of that red, that white, is one of the most valuable high-stakes endeavors in global business. It's not mere decoration. It's neurological programming. On a species-wide scale, Coca-Cola Red is arguably the most recognized color on the planet, a wavelength of light instantly associated with a specific complex emotional payload, refreshment, energy, happiness, manufactured, or genuine familiarity. Universality, a momentary pause, a shared experience. It bypasses language. It cuts through cultural noise. A flash of that red in a crowded marketplace in Mumbai, on a roadside stall in rural Colombia, glowing from a neon sign in Tokyo. It triggers an immediate, often subconscious, recognition. It's a beacon, the white script, swirling dynamically. Against it is the signature, the confirmation. Protecting this chromatic DNA is a billion-dollar operation. Imagine the logistics, ensuring that shade of red is reproduced perfectly on billions of cans and bottles rolling off production lines across hundreds of countries, using different materials, different printing technologies, under varying environmental conditions, ensuring that the white of the logo remains pristine, not tinged with yellow or gray, on labels, vending machines, delivery trucks, billboards, stadium signage, and digital screens across every conceivable platform. Legal teams wage constant, invisible wars against any competitor who dares to use a similar shade of red in the beverage aisle. Designers obsess over minute variations in Pantone swatches. Marketing executives understand that a fraction of a degree shift in hue, a slight thickening of the script, could subtly erode decades of accumulated recognition, that fragile, priceless neural pathway in the consumer's brain. The red and white are not just branding. They are the company's central nervous system made visible. A nonverbal command whispered directly into the global subconscious. A constant, reassuring hum in the background noise of existence. Maintaining that hum, ensuring it never wavers, never falters, is perhaps their single most critical, ongoing investment. It's the visual equivalent of the secret formula, a priceless asset guarded with religious fervor. This shift from selling a drink to selling a lifestyle, an identity, is the subtle, decades-long alchemy that underpins the empire. Coca-Cola didn't just advertise a beverage. It meticulously associated itself with the building blocks of human connection and aspiration. It didn't just sponsor the Olympics. It became synonymous with global unity and athletic achievement. I'd like to buy the world a Coke. It didn't just run Christmas ads. It redefined the global aesthetic of Christmas through Santa Claus. It didn't just feature in movies. It became an invisible character, a prop signaling America, normalcy, youthful rebellion, or shared moments in countless scenes. Its advertising evolved from touting medicinal benefits long abandoned to selling pure, abstract emotion, happiness, togetherness, refreshment of the spirit. They sold the pause that refreshes, not just the liquid. They sold the idea of sharing, the clink of bottles on a hot day, the cold satisfaction cutting through the mundane. They attached their brand to music, to sports, to movies, to moments of national pride, to everyday personal triumphs. Slowly, imperceptibly, Coca-Cola ceased to be merely something you consumed. It became a signifier. Wearing a Coke t-shirt wasn't advertising a drink. It was aligning yourself with a feeling, a global tribe. Choosing a Coke at a restaurant wasn't just a beverage choice. It was a tiny, comfortable assertion of the familiar. It became woven into the fabric of social rituals, the drink at the ball game, the companion on a road trip, the offering to a guest. They moved beyond thirst to own the context of consumption, transforming a simple act of drinking into a tiny, branded moment of lifestyle affirmation. They sold the atmosphere in which the fizz existed, even the attacks, the inevitable backlash against a behemoth built on sugar and ubiquitous presence are metabolized, turned into a perverse form of energy. Anti-sugar movements, documentaries exposing the health impacts of sugary drinks, academic studies, government soda taxes. These waves crash against the Coca-Cola system with undeniable force, impacting sales of full sugar colas in some markets. But observe the strange alchemy. Asterisk, asterisk, every headline screaming soda is bad. Every debate about sugar taxes, every earnest documentary inherently features the Coca-Cola logo. Asterisk, asterisk, the red can is the visual shorthand, the undeniable symbol for the entire category of sugary drink. The criticism, however valid its intent, becomes a massive, involuntary advertisement for the Coca-Cola brand itself. It reinforces its centrality. It keeps it in the cultural conversation. It reminds everyone constantly that Coca-Cola is soda, the archetype against which all others are measured. And crucially, while the criticism focuses on the old enemy sugar-laden Coke Classic, the Coca-Cola system is already pivoting. The narrative of health risks simply drives consumers deeper into their portfolio, towards the Dasani, the Smart Water, the Coke Zero Sugar, the vitamin waters, the teas, all bearing the mark. all flowing through the same profitable pipes. The controversy fuels awareness, and awareness, for a brand this ubiquitous, is oxygen. They don't necessarily win the argument about sugar. They simply ensure that the argument keeps their name, their logo, their vast array of alternatives permanently etched onto the public consciousness. The criticism becomes just another current in the river they control. So, what is the secret? The vault in Atlanta, the mythical merchandise 7X, the guarded recipe, these are potent symbols, valuable mystique. But the true, enduring secret, the formula that has allowed a simple syrup concocted by a wounded, addicted pharmacist to quietly, pervasively run the world, was never locked in a bank. The real secret formula was branding itself, not branding as mere logo or slogan, but branding as a comprehensive, adaptable, infinitely scalable system of meaning. It was the understanding that the value resided not solely in the liquid, but in the intangible associations wrapped around it, the colors, the feelings, the rituals, the sheer, inescapable presence. It was the alchemy of transforming sugar, water, caffeine, and flavorings into happiness, into belonging, into America, into Christmas, into a shared moment. It was building a distribution network so vast and efficient it became a global utility for hydration. It was creating a portfolio so diverse that every shift in consumer sentiment became an opportunity, not a threat. It was weaponizing color and script into universal neurological triggers. It was embedding the brand so deeply into the rituals and landscapes of daily life that it became ambient, invisible, essential, like the air or the language we speak. The secret wasn't what was in the bottle. The secret was making the bottle and everything it came to represent, an indispensable part of the world outside. The secret was understanding that they weren't just selling a drink, they were selling the context in which life happens, one tiny, effervescent moment at a time. And in that understanding, they built not just a company, but an ocean, an invisible, all-encompassing ocean of choice, association, and presence, in which we all, knowingly or not, now swim. And now, as this story slowly drifts into the distance, like the last pages of a great book closing, you don't have to hold on to anything anymore. The weight of the world, the noise of the day, it's all somewhere far behind you. Now, you've made it here, to this quiet place where nothing is urgent and everything is soft. Out there, the world keeps spinning, but here, you've stepped outside of time, just floating, just resting, just you and the steady rhythm of breath carrying you deeper. You don't need to finish the story. Sleep will finish it for you. And you don't need to stay awake for that. Good night.